Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. Welcome back to episode 140 of the Freight 360 podcast. We got a special episode today. Got a guest with us. We'll introduce him in just a second here. But hey, if you're brand new, we're so glad you found us after 139 other episodes. Make sure to check out everything else we've got out there in the entire library at freight360.net and wherever you're listening to podcasts. Keep sharing us. We're growing. We're loving it. Lots of questions coming in. A lot of repetitive questions, so we're going to try and have some new ones today. But go ahead, leave us that 5-star review. It helps us rank good on iTunes and all the other charts. All right, so today's topic, and we're going to introduce Matt Perkins here, but we're going to talk about kind of how to protect yourself when it comes to your customers, if potentially they're not going to pay an invoice or if they're going to get behind and slow pay. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we've got Matt Perkins here. Matt, welcome to the show. It's good to have you, man.
Thanks, guys. Nate, Ben, great seeing you.
Yeah.
Appreciate being on the show, episode 140. I've been a long-time listener and a first-time caller.
Yeah, you were saying, so you were around back in the day for episode 1 when it was Midnight Freight Broker, so that's good. Always love having a long-tenured person to come full circle. So, hey, give us, for everyone out there listening that doesn't know you or what you do, give us just a little bit of a background on, your work in brokerage and kind of how you got started and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure thing. So currently I run business-to-business logistics, third-party logistics provider, freight broker. Background is pretty specific in brokerage. So when I came out of school, I did start as a customer. So I know the customer. I know what to say to get them off the phone and all that good stuff. So started off as a customer. Through the network that I quickly built, I learned how to be a freight broker through the lineage of the old American backhauler for all the old school brokers out there. So a few people started their brokerage from that. I came on as their first employee, learned everything from the ground up. I still tell my team here, I literally staple papers and put them in bankers' boxes because we didn't have digital imaging back then. Progressed from there. I went to another 3PL doing account management, went back to brokerage for about 7 years until I decided, hey, I could maybe make the wheel turn a little better. So me and a partner came out and started business-to-business logistics going on about 11 years now.
Nice. That's awesome. So let me ask you, because people often ask us, like, hey, how long does it take me to actually, become successful? And the real answer is not everyone does, right? I mean, some people that whether you're W-2 or if you're an agent or if you're going to go launch your own shop, right? Not everyone's going to make it. Not everyone's cut out to do it. And it could be because they suck at sales, or they aren't confident enough, or they don't know how to run a business or how to take care of customers. It could be a number of things, but let's say you can do all those things, which obviously anyone who's lasted in brokerage for a decade plus, you've got to be able to check those boxes. But what would you say, how long before you knew, hey, this is actually working out for me. I'm building up a book of business. I'm learning and I'm progressing. How long do you think that took you?
Wow. It took me a while. So where I learned that I could actually do this was probably at my first brokerage. But because I started in ops, I had to eat dirt for years. So I went a year or two of just doing ops, tracking, tracing, dispatching, started dabbling in carrier sales. In year 3, I went to customer sales, saw a little bit of success from it, got lured away from that specific company to go elsewhere. Then when I came back, I had built that network, and then it just kind of took off from there. So my last employment job, it was a pretty much instant success, but that's because I had the 3 years behind me. Yep. And I had the network going behind me. And then with BTB here, it took off the same day. But again, I had at that point, 10 plus years of my network, pushing me. I had momentum. Yep. So answer that question, it's all in what you're going to do up front. It's the groundwork you lay, it's being optimistic, but it's going to take time. And in this world of this instant gratification, Amazon Prime delivering, everything like that, everybody thinks it's going to be a success in week 1, and it's just not. Yeah. It's going to take months, easily months to start getting momentum. My analogy I give these days is it's a freight train, right? When you see that freight train stop and it starts turning wheels, it's not going anywhere fast. You don't even know it's moving for the first minute or two. But then it starts going and going and going. And next thing you know, you've got that whole train moving at speed, trying to stop at that. So the first few months of freight brokering, it's that first few rotations of the train wheels. You got to give it time.
Yep. Ben, we've seen that a lot. We have seen people that, they think, I learned what brokering is and I'm going to go get my authority and boom, it should happen tomorrow, right? But it doesn't. It's a continuous learning process.
Well, I really like that analogy. I mean, I had built another book of business, I don't know, year and a half ago. And I mean, that was 2 years removed from 2 years because I was out of my non-compete. And same thing, like my relationships carried, right, from one side to the other, even over that span of time, because again, all the stuff that we talk about. But the interesting part was the whole rest of it. And we just taught a class in the TIA right before this on finding shippers and setting up your pipeline. And it was the same thing for me. And like, that's what we try to express to people that are new to this. I'm like, been doing this the better part of a decade, and I still had to get the freight train moving again. Like, I had to build the funnel. I need to get 300-400 leads in there. I've got to get into the momentum again to find my feet, my voice, and what sounds good to me and what you're hearing, because the environment changes based on who you're talking to, what's happened, right? But once it starts moving and you're making your follow-ups and you're getting back in touch with these people, like, you can feel the momentum. And I think that's where a lot of people also don't necessarily get to before they quit in some ways, right? They find a lead. It didn't go the way they expected. They go look for another one.
Yeah,
one more person, find another one, right?
There's that quote. It's like it takes 10,000 hours to become like an expert at. I don't know, Ben. You're like the guy.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell's book. I think it was Blink, but yeah, it basically broke down to it took 10,000 hours to master basically any type of skill, right?
Yeah. Break that down to like work hours. You're looking at like 5 years if you're doing it as a full-time job. So I think back to when I got started. I worked in asset-based trucking for like 3 years before I got into the third-party world, and I thought I'd pick it up super fast. It still took me like probably 4 months before I fully understood everything that goes into the brokerage side, and that's why you see a lot of guys and girls that like they might be an owner-operator, a dispatcher, whatever, and they're like, I want to go to the brokerage side. It doesn't. Switch doesn't flip right away. There's still a learning curve there, and like what we'll talk about today, right? With receivables insurance and protecting yourself from things like that with aging invoices, you still aren't going to learn that in your first 6. Hopefully, you don't have to learn that in the first 6 months, because there's other problems and more basic stuff that you'll learn. But it's a constant developmental thing.
I want to put a caveat to that though, like to that one point you said, because we actually worked with somebody. In fact, he's doing really well. He's opened his second office now, but he was coaching with me early on, and in their first 7 months, they hit a home run with a customer. Well, kind of, because it took them another 2 years to collect. I think it was like $350,000 that they incurred in basically bad debt in their first year. But, things are on fire. They're sending loads. All's right in the world until the bill comes due. And then, Thankfully they got paid. They see the other side of it. They've grown. They're 5 times their size now. But again, this does happen even early on because, again, think you were on the customer side. What do shippers do, right? If they can't pay their bills, somebody calls them out of the blue. Yeah, you want to onboard me? Sure, go pick this truckload up, right? It'll be the last person getting paid because everybody else we owe money to. And that does happen.
Yep, that's absolutely right. So
it's like that's the famous solicitation when someone gets a customer too quick without having a proper background checks. Oh, I got this customer. They want to ship with me. Yeah, they're on a list.
Yeah.
If you just do a search, they're on a list of.
If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably because it is. So
Yes,
we're going to get into more of that in just a few minutes here. We got to do a quick sports recap. Obviously NFL hasn't happened yet. Oh, I did want to mention in the NFL some of the scheduled games that have come out and some leaks for the schedule. This will air on Friday, so the official schedule will have already dropped, but we record on Wednesday. So here's what I know about the Bills. The Bills are going to be rumored to be playing on Thanksgiving again this year. I think it's Baltimore. That's what they're saying for the nighttime game. Hosting the Titans Week 2 on Monday Night Football in Orchard Park. I'll be at that game. I think Kansas City game they announced, or it might have been leaked, but there's some other ones out there. So that's the only thing on the Bills, really. But the Kentucky Derby, I know we talked about it, I think, last week. But, dude, what was the horse's name?
Rich Strike. The
Rich
second
Strike.
longest shot to win at 80-1. The number one was in 1913. Donna Rail was 91-1. But you were even telling me before this, and I didn't see this, I didn't get a chance to watch it live, but like it was at like 99 odds or something when they first announced.
Yeah.
Or like
so
in the
I
90s.
was looking it up. I watch the Derby every year. I don't know why I get so into it, but I like sports in general. So whenever there's like a random like big event, I'm like, I gotta watch it.
Event.
You know what I mean? I don't care what it is or if I know anything about it. I've watched cricket at some point because I was like, I gotta learn how this game works. But anyway, the Derby. I was looking at it, I was like, all right, a bunch of like the New York betting like sports books, whatever. They had like special horse racing ones, and they were offering like a risk-free bet. And I was like, okay, I'll place a bet on some of the top ones, and if I lose, they basically give you they credit it back to you to try and get you to keep betting on the ponies. So I was like, all right, let me see what the odds are, and I saw they offered 99-1 on Rich Strike. I didn't take it because I was like, I don't want to be guaranteed to lose, which I wouldn't have. But I bet on like the top three, and I think one or two of them actually like they placed in the top three, so I got the money back on it.
How much was the free bet? How much was the free bet?
It was
free bet?
$200. So
you'd have won like 18 grand.
I don't know, whatever that would have been. It would have been a ton, if I put it on that. But yeah, so I think you had to bet. I think it was a minimum of 200. So let's say you did 200 and you put it on that horse to win. I should have. In hindsight, why wouldn't you?
Free money. Put it on the longest shot.
Money back.
Put it on the longest shot. Come on, man. Damn it. But yeah. Anyway,
Next year.
Rich Strike. Literally, the owner. I think it was the owner. Was like, I didn't even know we were going to be in the Derby until like 5 minutes before the cutoff on Friday, which was the day before the race. So that's crazy. Just insane.
Yeah,
Matt, did you watch the race at all? The Derby?
No, I saw the replay of it when they were just talking about the odds and everything, and it's crazy how that happened. And they interviewed the jockey, and he said at one point he just said, "We're going to win this thing," and he just didn't. I don't know how you change your perspective to get that horse to go and keep going so strong.
It looked like he was on drugs as fast as it just went from the middle, like from the back to the pack to the middle, and then like the last like 20 seconds just absolutely crazy. Just flew up there past like 10 other horses. But
I just hope there's no stories like last year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, last year was all black cloud over the trainer. So let's just hope that it was just a horse that just felt determined to win.
Yeah, that was what was it,
I think they were
Medina
doping the 91-1 odds horse. They didn't expect to. You never know.
I'm not sure that won, and then ended up was like it was doped or
Rescinded.
whatever, and then it died of a heart attack like 5 months later. So
Yeah.
crazy. The Penguins, Ben, your Pittsburgh
upset the Rangers 3-1 final. Well, hopefully it's the final game of the series tonight. So
because did they lose the first game in overtime, like triple overtime or something like that? Or
they lost the first one in triple overtime. But like, why? I mean, leading up to this, I listened to a lot of Pittsburgh radio. The Pens were not looking great going into the playoffs. I mean, like they're like, well, maybe they win a game or two in the first series. Like that was the sentiment from like diehard Pittsburgh, basically sports fan and media, and it's just pretty cool to watch this series.
Dude, it's the same with baseball or anything. Doesn't matter what your record was at the end of the season. If you get into the playoffs, you're all starting from scratch, and everyone gets a chance to prove that they're the best team that can beat anybody. So, good stuff. Well, I'm going to give a shout out, or actually, Ben, you give a shout out to our friends over at DAT before we hop into the topic.
Taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Loadboard Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners, and you can quickly qualify and onboard new carriers. With the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out the show notes for a free month of Power, Express, or Trucker's Edge. And if you're adding a license to your office, use the link, you get a free month, and you support us.
Yep. All right. So today's discussion, Matt, I want to kind of let you give a brief overview on kind of the concept here. So we're looking at, what's the topic we're going to discuss here, and you had brought up with how things have been going lately, a lot of brokers may have their blinders on, right? Maybe not thinking about what's going to happen with customer payments and with the economy and all that. So give us I know you're not an economist. Maybe you are in a former life, but so kind of set the stage. What has happened, and why did this idea come up, or this topic come up in your head there?
So let's talk about the topic first, and I'll go into the backstory and then today's story, right? So we're talking about receivables insurance, which a lot of people don't know what that is. But when you're in the industry of cash flow management, which is deep down what a freight broker is, right? We've got shippers that want to pay us in 45, 60, 90 days, but we have carriers that want to be paid in 20 days or even 3-day quick pays, right? We become a bank. So our value is in the cash flow. And we also don't have strong means of evaluating our customers. When we make those cold calls and we're talking to a customer, I'm here in Tennessee. So if I'm calling a customer in Nevada, anywhere, I don't know who they are. I might have heard of the company. Their website might be familiar, but I don't know what their credit worthiness is. And there's a lot of companies out there, and it's not to downplay them, but they will give you reporting, and that's great. It's all based on information coming in, but there's not a backing behind it. They're going to give you this report, and at the end of the day, you still have to make that executive decision.
Yeah, they're not going to guarantee if their report or if their data makes a bad decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. How current is it? When's the last time they've seen financials? There's so many factors that go into this number they give you. But receivables insurance, when you align with a receivables insurance company, they're actually putting their wallet on the table and saying, okay, do you want $50,000 of a credit line, $100,000, whatever that number is, we'll approve it. We'll back it, so that what happens now is when a customer defaults or doesn't pay, bankruptcy, whatever the case is, if you're not getting your money as a freight broker, you can file a claim, like an insurance claim on your house, on your car, and you will be compensated from the insurance company upwards of 90% of the debt. And then these companies, and Nate, we were talking about it, there's only so many. There's only a couple players in this industry, but the beauty of it is they're worldwide companies.
Yeah. So
you're talking about global companies that know their ways around the economic legal system. They know how to collect their money back. They're not going to just give me $50,000 and say, okay, Matt, they didn't pay you. Here's the $50,000, and they're going to go back to their desk. They're sicking their legal team after that customer.
And on top of that, from an actuarial standpoint, they're way more vested to give you accurate information because, like you said, their wallet's on the table versus like if you pull a credit report from Truckstop or whatever, right? Any of those other reporting companies out there, they're just giving you data with nothing guaranteed. Whereas like companies like we talked about Euler as it's one that I've used in the past. I think you said you've used it in the past. You're going to pay them a premium and they're going to tell you, like, hey, they're going to give them a risk score. I think Euler was 1 to 10, right? Like 7 or below, you could get credit. Anything above that was basically like you're gonna
you're on your own.
We're not insuring anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what they'll do is they'll say based on this risk number that we give you, we're going to approve this credit line. And if you go over that, we're not going to cover it. But let's say you stay in that credit line and the customer defaults or whatever, and this is typically like a customer going out of business. It's not necessarily, they're going to dispute a charge and not going to want to pay it, right? You're not going to send that to them. But they're going to take that and go into their collection cycle and they're going to reimburse you a percentage. I've seen like 80%, 90%. And then you're on the hook for a small portion of it still, which is typically you lose your profit on it and maybe a little bit more. But that's the concept overall. But,
it's funny. Wait, to that same point, I wanted to add something too, because you said that earlier in your career, Matt, and it made me think of this. You were talking about accordion bank folders, right? Like my first job out of college, this is what I did. I worked for a bank and was a corporate lender. And it reminded me of this too, because I'm like, you're right. I'm like, even when we did this and we were the bank, right? Like, we didn't take somebody's word for it, right? We got audited statements every year. We did quarterly reviews of it. And some cases, it's lower dollar amounts than a brokerage extends, right? I mean, you're extending $2, $3, $4, sometimes $500,000 in credit to some of these customers. And again, it's like, what are you basing that on? Like,
Yeah.
what they happened to email you and what they said was recent?
He's good for it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you know.
That's my buddy Jimmy. He's good for it. No.
Let's be honest. What do most people do? They get the credit application back. It's got 3 trade references. And if I was a deadbeat customer, who am I going to put on my trade reference sheet? I'm going to put my 3 people that I'm actually paying.
Yep.
Not the 15 other that are in arrears.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you apply for a job and they're like, oh, list 3 references. Like, you're not going to put the bully from school that, beat you up or whatever. You're going to put 3 people that will, even if they have to lie, they'll say the best thing in the world about you, right? So, they're not all that great, when it comes to that stuff. So, and even to that point, like, I dealt with this today, like a customer we had no experience with, and we gave him $25K in credit, and the broker hit the credit line, wanted to get it increased, and was able to, because we had no history with them, we weren't going to bump it up any higher. The customer agreed to expedite a couple payments on their first couple invoices to show us in good faith, like, we're not going to always pay in 4 days, but here's to show our good faith that yes, we're worthy of getting a bigger credit line out of you guys, because what you see on a report online doesn't speak the full truth about how they're going to handle things with you. It just says, based on who's reported on them in the past, this is what we know. So yeah,
that's exactly it. I mean, we have a new customer right now where we got something approved, but the that customer entity just started recently, but they're under another parent company. So I know there's some better financial support from the parent company, but I want to help this company also get up on their credit. So we've been working with COFAS in this instance, getting their credit approved because the customers agreed, hey, I will make some extra payments to you. I'll pay a little bit quicker just to help the process. And it's a great talking point because how often does a customer really want to pay early? Not too often, but if you state your case on what you're trying to do to benefit them, oftentimes they'll pay you early.
Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. And then you get companies on the other side like Walmart. They don't have to prove themselves to anybody.
Yes.
I remember when I was on the asset side, 120 days, and it was like, nope, they're never going to pay any sooner than that. And they might pay slower depending on what's going on, but they don't have to prove themselves to anybody. So, But yeah, it's a good point. So that, I guess we'll bring it back to where we were before. So with what's happening economically right now, how does that look to you as a brokerage owner? What are you thinking about as far as your customers and everything with days to pay?
So with what's happening right now, and we're actually experiencing it right now, is things are slowing down, right? Things are getting soft. Sales could be dropping off a little bit for any particular industry. So the customer is going to start dragging payments out. And that's always the first sign of something could be amiss. So they start dragging it out. They start making payments. Then the payments stop coming as routine as they should. It's having that extra security that's helping us right now as well. For instance, the real world example I have right this minute is a customer that owed us up to $90,000. They agreed to start making payments. They started making payments. But then we started noticing the check date is not the date that they say that they're issuing the check. They start blaming the mail.
Oh, yeah.
And then
we sent it out last Thursday. Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, can I introduce you to ACH maybe? It is a free service, generally speaking. And they're like, no, we want a mail. I'm like, of course you do.
Yeah.
And, but now, like literally today, is uncanny timing, but today we sent an email to our sales rep saying, we're at the point of no return. They have to pretty much pay the entire balance, which it's bought down now to about 70,000, or we have to turn them in. We have to allow, the insurance agency to try to collect on that money, but that customer is probably out of business. The owner knows it.
Yeah.
The employees may not, but.
So let me ask you this: with the Receivables Insurance company that you use, do they have a timeline of when it has to be submitted to them by for it to be a valid claim? Because I know we had that with Ruler, and there were like instances where the broker or the customer's like, we're gonna send it in like in 3 days, and we're like, if we don't submit a claim like tomorrow, we're on the hook for this, and so what does that look like for you?
So it is roughly 180 days from date of invoice. We start getting pretty serious at 100 though. And, we try to give that grace period. But at the same time, they also ask for as close to 100 as possible, only because within that time, they can at least get in line a little quicker than other debtors. So they can try to collect on any, available assets quicker than knowing at 180 days. So we do try to give them that courtesy. To be honest, we've only filed in the, let me see. So we're sitting at about 6 years of having this kind of coverage. And in that time, we've only filed about 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like any other insurance product. You got to weigh, like, if I file this claim, I know my premiums are likely going to go up. So is it worth it for me to just not file the claim and lose X amount of money, or can I not afford to do that and I have to file the claim? You know what I mean? It's like, for example, homeowners insurance. Yes, if your house burns down, it's a total loss, you're going to file a claim. But let's say you have a plumbing issue and water comes through your ceiling and it's a couple $1,000s worth of damage. Well, you've already got a $1,000 deductible and $1,000 out of pocket. Insurance company does not see you at any higher risk than had you filed a claim. So, or had you not filed a claim, or that never happened. But yeah, it's, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of like subjective critical thinking that you gotta go through that process. And
because the other question I always want that makes me think about this is that, like, what about in the instances, right, where, like, they're just waiting to get paid from their customer, is where a lot of this stuff originates, right? Like, because people think like, oh, like, my customer's good, I see their stuff on the store shelves, people are still buying it, like, why would they not pay their bills? The reality is it's usually not that, right? It's usually they have made sales, they're waiting to get paid, right? And it's like, they can't get paid to pay us. And the other side is, again, you put that claim in, like, what's the likelihood that you're going to do business with them ever again too, right? And let's say they do get a check 10 days from now and could have paid you, right? They pay, your company, and again, you've got to go back. But 180 days is a long time. I mean, you should really be able to work with a customer throughout 6 months, basically. That's half of a year to understand and to figure this out.
Here's a piece of advice too. So you brought up a good point, Ben. There are customers out there that they're not going to pay every invoice on 30 days or whatever your terms are. It's based on their cash flow. And obviously their cash flow, Matt, that's exactly the whole conversation we're having here. That's why companies get into this whole pickle here. But let's say that a company, I've had companies that are, it's project based, right? They might have, I need 17 flatbeds to get pipe moved. It's part of a bigger project. And you can give me whatever terms you want, but I'm going to pay you when I get paid by my customer. If you know that's the case, find out up front before you're going to make a decision on how much credit you want to give them and expose yourself there. Transparency can go a long way, right? You're going to feel a lot better if you know that, yes, I'm getting paid in 2 or 3 months on this one, but then I might be getting paid in 10 days on these other ones. And you also don't feel like you're being lied to or swindled or, oh, the check's lost in the mail. Like, they're just being honest with you. This is how we operate our business. And if you don't want to work with us, fine, we're not a good fit. But we're just being upfront and honest. Have that conversation as a broker with your customers if they're not just a normal revolving amount of business type of customer. If they do like seasonal stuff, or if they have big like a peak season, or if they have project-based stuff, that's, it feels great to get a new customer, but you gotta, they're not going to be there for a long time if the cash flow is not coming through.
That actually happened to me, the exact same example you gave. So I had a customer that was a forwarder, and we were shipping steel, importing it. So I was getting the entire break bulk shipments in New Orleans. So everything that came in got unloaded, stevedored, then we routed the trucks to all the steel mills up in, like in the Ohio, Michigan area. Well, that was when the tariff went in like 17 or 18, the 25% tariff on like imported steel. And what happened was, we're shipping it, right? Like in the middle of it, we're like 3 weeks into a 4 or 5 week project, right? And we're shipping 5 loads a day for 45 days. What happened was, when that tariff went in place, they all argued over who was going to pay the 25%. And then they refused to pay until they worked that dispute out. We got paid, but I know, because I even talked to my customer years later, it took them like a year and a half to get paid what they were owed on all of that, because everybody felt like they had grounds to dispute it. And again, we were lucky because they made us whole, But I knew like they didn't get paid for like another year after that. And again, the same instance, project freight, it wasn't that they weren't willing to pay it. It was that, like, they didn't want to pay the premium. And then the customer that was shipping it into the country was the one paying them. So the receivers didn't want to pay the shipper. The shipper didn't want to pay the forwarder. The forwarder was the only one that had the cash that paid us, the broker. But nobody else was made whole until like a year and a half later.
What's a big thing too is that like a lot of companies, you're going to have retained earnings. So if you don't know what retained earnings is, that is a amount of money that you basically keep as just like slush money that's available. So as you have an ebb and flow in your business, you can cover payroll and you can cover your basic expenses and, you know, whatever your vendor payments are. A lot of times they'll want like a quarter or a half a year's worth of their expenses in a retained earnings, or to keep retained earnings in their in the bank, so that if they get slow paid by their customer, or they have a peak season or something like that, they've got the funds on hand to still keep paying properly, so they don't get a bad name. Not everybody does that. Not every company is as financially healthy or stable as they want to be, or as the next guy. But that stuff is real. And let's say you tripled your business in a single year. Well, you're most likely not going to be able to keep caught up on having that much money in the bank. You're relying on your receivables to come in. So
my favorite saying is
accounting lesson.
More businesses die of indigestion than starvation. Like, people think because a business is growing is just only good things. And that's one of the main reasons why companies do go under, is because, again, their sales have outpaced their cash flow, their cash on hand. They can't finance their businesses. They can't pay payroll. And eventually, you know, it's over.
That's, you know, a good point. So I'd like to talk about the story that even introduced me to Receivables Insurance, because I think it'll resonate with a lot of people that are listening. And it kind of goes along with that comment you just made, Ben, along with the other comment about, you know, when you're seeing things on the shelf and you're thinking, okay, everything's good, but this is an insurance policy, right? So here's a story. One year, it was our third year in business, so we're still a pretty young company, and we had this landscaping customer. So when you go to Menards in the Midwest, but Lowe's, Home Depot, and you're buying those bags of mulch, 2 for $5, 2 for $4, whatever the price is, that was these guys, right? So these guys were bagging the mulch, the rock, all that stuff for your landscaping needs. We were shipping upwards of 20, 30 loads every single day because it was the spring season, right? But we had zero idea how to, you know, associate a credit line. So we just kept going. We're like, oh, we're making so much money. You know, like, look at all the profits, look at all the loads. They're not saying no. So all of a sudden we go like 2 months into it, and, you know, the checks they're coming, but they're not coming as, you know, fast as it's going. All of a sudden the check starts slowing down. We start asking questions, you know, what's going on? And this is, now keep in mind, this is the second year we're dealing with them. We dealt with them on the tail end of their season, the year prior. And then we were ahead of it in the spring. Well, then they just like stopped paying, and they were trying to communicate, but it wasn't really a lot of good information. But finally, the one guy said, look, I like you guys, but you're probably going to need to get a lawyer. And that was, you know, and the comment we kept saying was, well, do we keep giving more credit? Like, we're moving all these loads. And we're like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? And then, like, we're in for a penny, in for a pound. And that's what happened. So we were one of the largest debtors on the bankruptcy, and we got a call from a sales rep from Euler at that point saying, hey, did you hear your competitor? Did you see your competitors on the list? And we said, yeah. Did you know your competitor just got a check for 90% of that balance listed? We're like, no. He's like, ask me how. We said,
that's a good
thing.
I love it.
It was slam dunk. The guy literally said, this is what I sell. And we said, can you come in tomorrow to talk to us? Now, obviously we weren't going to get paid on that account. But it was a multi six-figure loss. I mean, if you look at it from a sales revenue, we lost multiple six figures. We still had to pay all the carriers. And we were a young company. We paid all of our carriers. We laid off nobody, which I'm proud to say in that instance.
It's a huge accomplishment.
You just don't know. And so to the comment about being on the stuff on the shelf, right? So here's the funny story in court. Because since we were a top 10 debtor, we were involved in the conglomerate that would be on the conference calls with the lawyer. The CFO of this company, flat out on the stand under oath, was asked, do you even know if you're profitable selling your bags of mulch and this and that? And he said, we don't exactly know.
Wow.
And that was the light bulb. It's like, holy cow. And I've never said no to an insurance policy for receivables since.
The only person that won in that situation is the homeowner that got mulch for pretty cheap.
No, it's also the business owner. He was, I won't go into crazy details, but he was structured so well. I'm sure his golden parachute worked just
Well, that's
fine.
what I was going to say, because what a lot of these companies do in like the fraud cases that I know that like I've been a part of, and again, previous life career, is that like they'll keep selling, because if they can keep getting paid, right, they take that cash and pull it out of the business, then they fold it and then just hope that they can hide it or get away with enough of it. So when the chickens do come home to roost, that like they've got enough like squirreled away. It happened, short story, it happened in Boca. It was on the news 2 weeks ago, and it was a car company, but one financed it and the other one sold it. And they were high-end Lambos and like supercars. Well, when the one folded, they found out that they literally sold every car they had on their property. They didn't have titles for them. They were just taking $200,000-300,000, and then they just put paper up all over the windows one morning, and people went to go get their cars, and they were literally gone. So like that's what they do. They're like, hey, the ship's sinking. Take as much cash as you can. We're already basically going to jail, or whatever they did wrong. Took whatever cash they could, and hopefully got away with it.
I heard about that story, actually. That's the second dealership in a year to actually do that. They were selling cars without titles. I love cars,
Yeah.
so. And they were selling, the other one was out in, I believe, Arizona. And they were selling cars without titles, and people were buying cars and not getting them, or not getting
A
the
guy
title.
bought one, it was brand new, dropped it off to get like some stuff added to it. He's like, I haven't even driven my car. Had it delivered here, and I went to go pick it up. And he said, I only went to pick it up because I saw it on the news. And when I drove by in the morning, the place was boarded up. But
That's insane.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, just
But again,
just a nightmare.
Just because you're seeing products and just because everybody else thinks it's going well, again, like there are things going on, and not everybody's ethical. Not everything goes out the way it's supposed to.
So the receivables insurance piece, we've touched on it briefly in other episodes, I think, or in some of our content that's out there. Like any expense or any insurance product, right? It's meant to, you spend money as an expense, and it's meant to offset risk for you. So, Matt, let me ask you this: at what point in a broker's career, let's say someone opens up a brokerage, at what point in their career should they entertain the concept of receivables insurance? Is it day one? Is it once they start moving any amount of freight? Is it when you had a certain revenue? As a business owner, what's your take on that?
Well,
You've been burned. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It didn't take you much to talk to the guy from Euler.
No. So I think it comes down to multiple decisions. One, what is your risk tolerance? How much are you extending a customer? So when we first started the company, all of the customers had an existing relationship with me. And so I knew they were paying the bills because I kind of dealt with it on the back end at the previous location. So I knew that they were good for it. But again, going back to the same story that I just told everybody, you just don't know. Just because you know them personally, you might take them to a dinner or a baseball game, doesn't mean you know their financial status.
Yeah.
So it's what's your risk tolerance? If you start dabbling with employees, if you start they're going to bring you customers that you don't know. And that's one thing. So once you start giving up control of your brokerage, you should hands down be looking at it, because this customer did come to us from somebody else. It was not an acquired customer of myself or my business partner. So we didn't have that keen eye of judgment. And unfortunately, that person brought us another, very small deadbeat that stiffed us as well. And, we had a few of those that actually happen, just not to this level. So if you start having employees, look into it. If your risk tolerance is low, look into it. The premium is based on your sales.
I was going to ask you, what are you comparing this risk to, right? Like, what is the typical cost? How do they calculate it? How does that go?
Yeah, it's like fractions of pennies on the dollar for sales. So to give you just a rough idea, we spent about $56,000 this year on a policy that covers me upwards of $60 million.
Yeah, I was going to say when last company I was with, I think it was $100K a year was the premium, covered 80% of the loss, and the company was probably doing $100 and some million. So that sounds about the same ratio there. But you're right. You're talking it's peanuts. It's like almost nothing. But as you're growing, like you said, if you're going to do $50-60 million in a year, it's worth spending 40-50 grand or whatever for a policy like that to cover your butt, because it's a tough pill to swallow when you've got to write off a loss of six figures. You know what I mean? So
that's the thing,
offsetting risk.
And I don't know what a base premium would be. I mean, when we started the policy, we were about a $5 million brokerage, so we were spending about $25,000. So I mean, if you're entry level, you could still be just spending $10,000, but isn't that worth it? When you could lose $10,000 and our average
Loads.
billing right now is $1,500 a load.
Yeah.
That's just like, you're talking about 12, 15 loads. You could easily make up, you could lose that money, or you could invest it and just be protected. And then it's all gas, right? Because now you've got that backing, that confidence. You'll sign on any customer.
Yep.
Because if they pass the sniff test with your insurance company, you're going to give them a credit line.
And that's the thing too that's worth saying, is that it's not just hey, I have this policy, I can do whatever I want. No, they're part of what they do is they're going to tell you yay or nay, and if yay, how much for a customer.
Yes.
You have a credit department. So you're getting a credit department with that as well, right? You're getting a credit department of people that's all they do for a living. They have the resources and the skill sets to just do that job, right? And that in and of itself is incredibly valuable for companies that are, like you said, have employees that are on the growth side, that are, bringing on risk that they're not necessarily aware of for a lot of different reasons.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's be honest. I could never even hire a credit analysis for $55,000.
I was just going to say that.
And that credit analysis is not going to go knocking on the legal doors to collect money anyways, or pay me any bad debts. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. Like you said, Ben, you've got an entire credit department. You got an actuary department. It's non-discriminating, to its fullest. It's black and white. Here you go. These people are good. We'll approve this. We'll partially approve that. They said it, and I am no longer playing favorites among sales reps. It's not my decision. It's insurance company's decision.
It's a good point. So, well, good stuff. Good discussion. I'm going to give a shout out to our friends over at Lean Solutions Group, and then we'll hop into our Q&A before we wrap it up here. But this quarter, we've been focusing a lot on the labor shortage. So, I mean, even if you wanted to go hire a credit analyst, right, at 55, yeah, good luck with however Walmart's giving sign-on bonuses now, right? But anyway, with the labor shortage out there, Lean Staffing, that's one of their divisions of Lean Solutions Group, does a great job with the nearshore model. They've got multiple offices down in Colombia, South America. So if you're trying to fill maybe a credit analyst seat there, or account rep, or dispatch, track or trace, whatever the case is, check them out at leangroup.com. You can get bodies in seats for roughly half the cost, if not less than that now, with what wages are in the U.S. So check them out, again, at leangroup.com. So today we got two questions. First one is, how do I reinstate my authority? So the last I checked on this was probably 3 months ago, and I'm curious if you guys have any other insight. But the same system, the URS, is the Unified Registration System. I believe it's the same thing for applying for a new one, or if you have an old one that you're trying to reinstate it. I think it's one of the first questions it asks. It's a lesser fee though, because I think you pay $300 for a new authority, and it's like $80 to reinstate it. Does that ring a bell or sound in the ballpark?
It sounds good. I've never had to reinstate. So
yeah, if you've never had to reinstate it, that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yes, indeed.
You probably see that a lot more with motor carriers though. Anyway, if they smaller trucking company, maybe they are slow, or they're kind of taking a break as just an owner operator, whatever, and they're like, I'm not gonna renew my authority, and they let it go, and then, hey, I want to reinstate it, keep the same MC number, so I don't look like I'm 2 days old. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, pretty sure it's
80.
We're on FMCSA's website.
It's $80.
URS, $80.
Yep. $80.
There you go. It's So you could either Google it or just go to FMCSA's website. Their registration system is all digital online now. It has been for like close to 10 years. The form is all electronic. So you literally just type in, it asks you questions, and then you pay them, and then you wait. So
good question. Request reinstatement online, and then you submit an MCSA 5889 form via the web form. That's it.
There you go. There was my guess, Matt's guess, and Ben's official answer. So
There you go.
good stuff. Second and last question here is, how do I handle it's customer routed objection? So, you call a prospect, and I'm going to broaden this. They could say it's customer routed. They could say they only use, they don't use brokers. They only use asset-based companies, whatever the case is. It's a pretty standard, common objection. We were actually just talking about this an hour ago, probably, Ben, you and I. So I'll give my take, and then I'm curious what you guys think. As a starter, it could be BS, it could be real, but the customer routed one specifically, and Ben, I'll let you elaborate more on it, but let's say that whatever they're shipping, they're saying that their customer that they're shipping it to is the one picking the truck and all that. Well, how did it get to them, right? Do they have inbound freight that they're controlling, or are they not controlling anything at all? They just have the best situation. They have no transportation headaches. It's someone else's fault, someone else's problem to deal with. So that's my take. Is you have to uncover if it's real, and there's a lot of ways you can ask additional questions to uncover that. So what do you guys think?
Let me ask you, Matt. I mean, you were talking about this earlier in the episode when you used to be on that in that role, right? And knowing what to say to get brokers off phones, right? Like, what normally do brokers say when you said that to them?
I just said, usually I just said, you got to call me back.
Yeah.
And, I was pretty young then, so I didn't hone my gatekeeper skills that well. So it was just pretty much, I just didn't answer the phone for the most part. But, Nate, as far as my advice, you hit it on the head. Number one, how'd the freight get there? That's one of my favorite lines. One of my largest customers and longest standing customers is a customer pickup. And they do that because, in the world of pricing, when you're buying a widget, there's two pricing that widget manufacturer is going to give you. It's delivered or it's pickup price. So just do the simple math and say, well, there's this gap between the two pricing, but I can move it for this, meaning I get to keep that. So hence the customer pickup. And, they create an entire employment department of like 5 or 6 people because of the savings they get when they do customer pickup. So ask that prospect. Okay, great. You got customers pick up your freight. That's fantastic. What a headache off your plate. But how does the freight, how does the material get to your facility? Oftentimes, if you take control of it, you can save money versus your delivered price that your supplier is charging you, because they're probably marking it up, because every customer usually marks up their price a good 15-20% on the transport.
Yep.
So there's that. There's another one that you can throw the Hail Mary saying, hey, I get it. That's great. But every now and again, something happens where maybe you have to cover for your customer's shipment because something didn't go right and your customer's mad. Who moves it then? When the customer pushes back to tells you no supplier, you screwed up, you have to ship it to me now at your cost, who are you going to call? And that's one. And then, when we talk about referrals, if you've built any kind of rapport with that customer, that prospect, why not ask for the referral? Hey, is there any way you could throw my name in the hat? It's actually happened to me before. That takes a little relationship building. You don't ask them the first phone call. They're not going to say, who are you again? No, I'm not going to refer you. But that's down the road some.
Spot on. That's literally that's my prospecting call. That's how I handle the objection, and those are the different avenues I'm looking for, right? Because the ridiculousness of it is no facility anywhere is just having things arrive and disappearing without any recollection, any authorization or any control over it, right? It would be a melee. So again, the only thing is, and Matt even said it out loud, but that's what I go at. I go with a pattern interrupt. I say what they're not expecting. They're expecting me to go, oh, or they're expecting me to argue with them, or they're expecting me to hang up. So I just go with the exact opposite. That's fantastic. So nobody's got to deal with any of the headaches picking up loads. That's got to make it so much easier to run your warehouse. Who does have the fun job of, dealing with all the truck drivers that, arrive and leave? Oh, that's Jimmy. All right. Well, now I got Jimmy's name, but, then we're going from there to, again, well, how do you guys get your shipments inbound? Anything that leaves that building had to get there some way, right? That doesn't open any avenues. You could save them some money because, again, if they are paying FOB, they're likely paying more than it would probably cost you to do it for them. And then, the fourth route is if you've talked to them once or twice or you're on your third call, I'm asking for the referral. Hey, who is it that handles that? And by the way, when you guys get jammed up and something comes up last minute and you've got to get a load out, who do you guys utilize when these scenarios come up, right? Oh, well, yeah, we use a broker for that. Oh, okay, right? And again, that's usually maybe 2-3 conversations, but there's still a lot of opportunity to uncover and a lot of information to find before you bail and pull the ripcord.
Add to with any kind of objection, or if you smell something funny on a prospecting call, don't get in a pissing match. It's not going to lead you anywhere good, right? If you decided that, okay, I'm not going to mess with this guy anymore or this girl anymore, just move on. Go on to the next call. If the call's not going good, it's not going good. By you trying to prove them wrong and call their BS, you're not going to get their business. It's not going to do you any good. They're just like, ugh. So
wait 6 months, maybe they'll quit, and then there'll be someone new in the seat. Then you find out, hey, they do route it after all.
Yeah. Oh, you guys must have switched. The last guy told me. No, we've always been doing it this way.
No.
So, well, good stuff. Good episode. Matt Perkins with B2B Logistics. Did I get it right? B2B Logistics.
Well, technically, legally, it's BTB.
Oh, BTB.
Yes. Okay. Yes. The 2 is TO, not TWO. Okay. Unfortunately.
Gotcha. Well, awesome having you on. Happy to have you on any time to go through some good content. It's nice to have a conversation about stuff that happens, the things you want to do when you've reached success in brokerage. And, even for the folks out there that are newer in brokerage, learn about this stuff and understand what's coming down the road. Maybe you're a W-2 and you never want to own your own shop, your own brokerage shop. That's fine. But you can at least understand what goes into the credit decisions when you get turned down for some unknown farm that all of a sudden is growing corn, right? Because they've got no history and, they're at risk of not paying their bills. So it's just good to understand the big picture there and have the right questions to ask your customers so you have proper expectations about what are the payment terms and what can we expect out of you guys. So good stuff. Any last thoughts around the house? Matt, what's happening good in Tennessee this week? Anything?
The weather's turning nice. Boats are in the water. And my kids' soccer season is coming to a conclusion, so it's time to enjoy some summer.
There you go. You ever do? So I go down to Nashville every handful of months, and I hear people always tell me about they will do these things where they hop in an inner tube and they go down a river or creek with a
case of beer.
Cooler of beer. Is that a thing? Does that really happen?
Oh, it is. Now, we have it here in the Smokies. There's a small little town, drawing a blank all of a sudden, but you can go down a little rapid with a raft, but this location doesn't allow you to have a cooler, unfortunately. You can't even bring a bottle of water.
Wow.
So it's unfortunately a few bad apples, right? You leave some water bottles floating in some nice clear water, and they get, it's not good for business. So
yep. There's always someone that ruins the fun for everyone else.
Yep.
Well, good stuff.
That is a thing.
Yep. Ben, what do you got?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. If you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.